I've spoken to you guys before about how certain online figures, social media influencers have become and can become the victims of cartel violence due to the public figure that they're portraying. And last month, a case of this, a family who was killed, is a perfect example to show you guys that this goes on pretty frequently, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Borderland Dispatches, an Ironclad original brought to you by Ground News with yours truly, Katarina Schultz. All right, so last month, a family of four, including a woman who's kind of an influencer, Esmeralda Ferrer Garibay, were executed and found wrapped in plastic inside a pickup truck in Guadalajara. We've seen this before, where someone with online presence, I mean, one of the most infamous, most recent cases would probably be Valeria Marquez getting shot on TikTok Live. But this is a little bit different because there's a family. So you have the bodies of Esmeralda, who was 32 years old, her husband, Roberto, he was 36, and their two children, Gael, who was 13, and Regina, who was 7 years old. Their bodies were found inside an abandoned gray Ford Ranger. A prosecutor in Mexico ended up confirming through surveillance footage um, that the truck was left with these bodies inside. There was blood, bullet casings, and other evidence that the murders happened there in the vehicle before it was dumped. Um, Essentially, the crime scene bore all of the hallmark stylings of a cartel-style execution. It was methodical, deliberate, and, like I always talk about, designed to send a message. Because typically, when we're seeing this new age extreme gore violent hits, it is to send a message to the public that these people conducting these hits are to be feared. They are the ones in power, and they are the ones benefiting from this extreme high level of impunity. So Esmeralda was, let me kind of explain to you who these people were. Like, why did the cartel take them out? Key question. Esmeralda was sort of a rising TikToker. She flaunted wealth and narco aesthetics, while her husband's dealings could have sort of drawn some sort of criminal interest. I mean, when this story broke, it was there was a lot of speculation that Esmeralda's husband was a narco involved in the lifestyle. Um, Roberto reportedly worked in vehicle sales and tomato farming in Michoacan. Both of those industries line up very well with industries that the cartels are using as financial pipelines, and not to mention them being based in Michoacan and moving to Guadalajara. These are cartel hotspots. Um, and also violent hotspots. So these industries are often infiltrated by organized crime. I've talked about this quite a lot. It is what it is. The family had recently relocated to Guadalajara. It could be, to escape Michoacan's extreme violence. But authorities suspect that Roberto was the real target in this family execution. Esmeralda's online presence is what brought the headlines on, because you kill someone who has a little bit of fame and it draws a lot of attention. So, a few initial suspects were released in this hit and then abducted in a coordinated hit, which kind of shows how deep cartel reach goes. Again, this is something I talk about a lot. You name names, you find the suspects, immediately those people are gone. And everyone kind of turns against them. Everyone who is in this nefarious lifestyle that they had maybe assumed would protect them or advocate for them, I guess. So investigators detained two men linked to the auto repair shop, but they later released them due to insufficient evidence. We see this time and time again in these cases, right? What are we always told? Oh, this person was holding the gun, shot the person, their footprint was on the dead body, their saliva was, on the victim's mouth. Not enough evidence every time. It's a great way to get out of a crime. They just say there's never enough evidence. Minutes after leaving the prosecutor's office, those same men who were detained were kidnapped by gunmen who had apparently been waiting for them for 2 hours. Um, 3 in total were taken, 1 escaped, and authorities called this a coordinated operation, raising questions about whether these men knew too much, or they were pawns, or they themselves were involved in this whole fiasco. Um, but apparently forensics and testimonies are still kind of in the process. You guys may see, and I've been dealing this a lot lately with this case in Juarez. Anything that has to do with prosecutors, judicial process takes fucking forever. You have to have the patience of a saint when dealing with these criminal cases in Mexico. And that goes for both accessing the information, accessing legitimate, accurate information, and waiting for the responses, like, or seeing any sort of justice. It's actually a shit show. Um, I've always complained about the way legal systems work essentially globally. I feel like most countries, particularly Canada, US, and Mexico, have not nailed this down. But for real, in Mexico, it's a fucking snail race. Okay, so when we're talking about the possible motives and theories here, this kind of goes for like every influencer cartel hit that we've seen recently. I have posted a list of multiple on my Substack, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about them in previous Dispatch episodes, whether we're talking about Marquito Toys or his brother or Valeria or this family, or there was a woman earlier this year in Tijuana, I think it was Fedra. All these people um, portray such a luxurious lifestyle and align it so closely with a criminal luxurious lifestyle that when you are trying to distinguish whether or not these people had any involvement in organized crime or not, it makes it incredibly difficult, because how can you really tell that this person is just regular rich or illegal rich? If this person really was even wealthy, or if it was all just a facade for social media? It makes it very difficult. And then when you look through who they associated with, who they followed, who interacted with them on social media or publicly, impossible. Now, in this case, authorities haven't tied Esmeralda or even Roberto directly to organized crime. But, like I said, Michoacan is a battleground, all right? Um, Auto sales, trucking, farming are pretty much controlled or extorted by groups like CJ&G, La Familia Michoacana, and just local militias, a lot of them which have been absorbed by these major groups. Others who are kind of operating independently and conducting low level but still impactful crimes. That's something we need to remember. Even if we're not talking about like Sinaloa Cartel or CJ&G or La Familia or Noreste, any of like the major cartels like that have been designated as FTOs, a lot of them, these smaller ones, perhaps, I guess is the best way to put it, are still conducting localized violence and crimes, which are in fact affecting the livelihoods of many people living in these regions. Um, Whereas others have simply been absorbed or now sort of work under the names of these larger cartels. A great example of this is like when I broke that story about the young pregnant women in Juarez being kidnapped and their babies being sold. And I said it was CG&G in charge of that. And a lot of people started coming for me and saying, it's La Línea, it's La Línea. Well, you know what? We're seeing that a lot of these larger and violent operations, and it's been confirmed by multiple authorities, are the ones essentially conducting or uh, kind of in charge of financing a lot of these types of operations while it's still going on by the very people who are part of these smaller groups or these fragmented cartels like La Línea. Okay, makes sense. Maybe not to all of you, but I could give a fuck. If you're a critical listener, you will understand. As a journalist, one of the biggest challenges I face is cutting through all the noise and bias to find out what really happened. Too often, the same story is reported in completely different ways depending on the outlet and the agenda behind it. That's why for today's episode, I partnered with Ground News. It's one of the best tools to cut through all the noise and find out what's really happening. Check out this article that I found. You can immediately see which outlets picked it up, how they framed it, and even which podcasts are covering it. If there's another topic you're tracking, whether that be cartels, border security, corruption, you can plug it right into the search bar and see the full spread of coverage. Subscribe to get 40% off of the Vantage plan by going directly to groundnews.com/ironclad or by clicking my link in the description. With their bias checker, you can see exactly where a news outlet leans, and with their blind spot feed, you can catch up on stories that may be underreported and that you may have missed. This organizes all of the coverage into one place so you can grasp the full story. It's not about telling you what to think, it's about helping you think critically with context. Roberto's profile as a businessman also in those industries could have made him and his family vulnerable. You know, when you have a lot of wealth, when you're super public about it too, which I will never understand, it draws a lot of attention. And typically, most of it is attention that you don't want. It's typically people who want to rob you, who are jealous of you, who want you dead, who don't like you. Some weird shit every time. Now, Esmeralda's flaunting of wealth and narco-themed videos could have also amplified suspicions or angered rivals or even been seen as performative, and we've seen that cartels don't like that. You're pretending to be someone you're not. I mean, look at El Pirata de Culiacán. If you're antagonizing these guys and you're not who you say you are, and you're saying that you're part of them or whatever, you die. It's not a joke. In Mexico, honestly, perception often carries as much weight as proof. I think this actually even rings true for gangs in the US. Um, we've seen some rappers and wannabe gangsters who are like throwing up like Crip Killer or whatever, and next thing you know, the Crips are after their asses. So you can see how this works. You know, loyalties are seemingly very important in the criminal world. Now, this is so jarring to me, but on Esmeralda's TikTok, okay, when we're talking about perception, she has one viral video that is literally, it reads, advantages of having a narco boyfriend. Okay, first of all, of course, that's gonna like fuel speculation about your husband's ties, but also, why would you say that? I'm not victim blaming because this is actually very sad that a family was killed like this and there's two young children involved, which is just horrific. You guys know how I feel about that, as should everyone else. But you know what they say, like, you play stupid games, win stupid prizes. In what world, especially if you're living between Michoacan and Guadalajara and people are already speculating about your lifestyle and you have a sort of public personality, why would you ever post saying, look how great my life is dating a narco? Even if it's satire. Like, with these types of things, unfortunately, you do have to draw a line. Honestly, it probably would have been better if she just posted being like, day in the life of a sugar baby. Like, let me show you the life of having a sugar daddy. Something that doesn't publicly align her or fuel theories that this family is involved in organized crime. Because that could be, and it was, very easily misinterpreted. Okay, but end of day, what we're seeing here is a broader pattern of public figures being violently targeted. Why is this, you may ask? It sends a message. You may have followers, you may be famous, you may know famous people, and you may have money, but you can't run from a bullet, and neither can your kids nor your significant other, which is pretty fucking scary if you ask me. So, if that was the goal for whatever this hit was, accomplished, honestly, at least in my books. This is certainly not the first time a high profile figure in Mexico's entertainment or influencer world has been killed or targeted by the cartels. I've talked about many other high profile cases like this before over the course of 2025. We've seen it a lot this year, but even dating back, I've talked to you guys about Chelino before, Sergio Vaga, whoever. Cut that out. But even back in the day, I've talked to you guys about Chelino, Valentin, you name it. And still now, we're not just seeing these guys become targets of the cartels, but also of the United States. You guys don't have to always tie that in because right now this is like a bilateral crisis. El Macabelico was sanctioned. The boxer Cesar Chavez was deported. He had a warrant for his arrest and pending charges in Mexico. These are high profile figures, people who are making bank on Apple Music, bank in the ring, had a massive fan base in both countries, worldwide even, and yet nobody is immune, whether that's immunity from cartel violence or immunity from the United States government. It does not matter. If you're involved or people think you're involved, you're likely going to pay the price that comes with that involvement. I think the main takeaway from this is that being famous or flashy in Mexico, or your fame or flashiness having some sort of ties to organized crime, doesn't insulate people from cartel violence, right? Instead, it can extract, at the very best, extortion and suspicion, or at the very worst, violence and revenge, and you becoming a message. And I get it, you know? Sometimes I want to post a really banger of a song on Instagram that would not leave a good taste in a lot of people's mouths. But I'm just saying, don't do it because look at what happens to people who do. Look at what happens to people who maybe even inadvertently show support for one side of the cartel, one faction, one individual, or tries to make people believe that they themselves are a part of it, or they maybe even are. Social media fame honestly comes with unique dangers, especially when you're kind of rubbing shoulders with the cartel. Flaunting these luxury items, I mean, look at Marquitos Toys family. They have been under attack. Posting narco-corridos or joking about cartel boyfriends can literally serve as status signaling online, but carry real-world consequences. I think a lot of people forget about this, and I would know because I take a lot of heat. Online is one thing, but a lot of what's said and done online can transcend into real life. It does. And there needs to be a deeper understanding of that because for influencers like Esmeralda, what might have been branding or performance has now been read as cartel affiliation. And this blurring of identity is literally lethal, particularly in regions where digital image and criminal economy overlap. It's no joke. And I know sometimes I take heat for when I talk about the corridos and I talk about the propaganda and people tell me it's the same as gangster rap. I know I've said that before, or that it doesn't actually perpetuate any violence. But I'm a firm believer that anything, any type of media that's glamorizing something that's negative, nefarious, or can get you killed will have that very effect on anyone who is vulnerable enough to fall for it. And like it or not, believe it or not, there is a large population that does fall for that, that wants to be a part of this lifestyle. I mean, look at this. Look at what we're fucking talking about. They want to be a part of this lifestyle. They think it's cool. They think it's glamorous. They think it's luxurious. And I mean, yeah, if you look at it online, of course it is. But it has real world consequences. And they're not fucking glamorous. A bullet is not made of gold. Now, this story is more about just this one influencer family with a lot of rumors surrounding them, okay? It's about how cartel violence, online image, and economic vulnerability collide. And it is very sad. And I know I get this a lot, and I know a lot of you bring it up. Well, if these people knew what they were getting themselves into, then of course they were going to die. Like I said, and I talked about this when I reported on Valeria Marquez, just because someone is not a perfect textbook victim doesn't take away from the fact that they were a victim and perhaps didn't deserve to die, okay? We have to have a little bit of understanding here. By underlining that Esmeralda and Roberto may not have been cartel players, or at least not high up on the food chain, but their lives touched the worlds of business and narco-culture and digital fame. These are each a dangerous fault line in Mexico. And whether you believe that people like Marquitos Toys and his family, or Valeria or Esmeralda and Roberto deserved it or took on something that they knew could end badly, in this particular case, 2 young children lost their lives. 13 and 7 years old, a little boy and a little girl. That's collateral damage of this cartel violence and war that I've been reporting on now for years. So maybe it's not black and white. It's not. It's completely nuanced. And maybe even though you think, yeah, sure, who cares? Kill them. Let them kill each other. It doesn't keep innocent people safe. That's not how this works. Their murders show how blurred these lines have become between who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's involved, who isn't. And the question for me at least remains, okay? Was this strictly business or the deadly result of living in a country where perception alone can get you killed? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Borderland Dispatches, an Ironclad original brought to you by Ground News with yours truly, Katarina Schultz. As always, see you next time.